Stand up.
And now, stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe, it's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, is the aging rusty car on blocks in my front yard a metaphor for my slowly diminishing retirement fund? And does my local COVID vaccination site offer free donuts and also insulin for my raging diabetes? And now, the podcast host who captains his boat like Ahab in a hurricane, Pete Dominic.
That's right, you nailed it again, Pico. I am your skipper, and welcome to this vessel, the SS Stand Up. Very excited to have you. I have excellent pair of guests joining me today. I had a wonderful, hilarious, insightful conversation with the brilliant and hilarious Maura Quint. That is coming up. And also caught up with Glenn Kirschner, former federal prosecutor, to talk about the cases the Department of Justice is or is not taking up at the insurrection cases and more. Two excellent guests on today's Stand Up and a big old news segment coming your way. Lots to discuss with you. Hope you're doing all right. A lot of great feedback on yesterday's show. Thank you very much for all of that. I love your feedback. And I asked for vitamin N pictures, and you guys flooded me with them, and they made me so happy. If you're a subscriber, you get an email every day with the show notes in it and a nature photo taken from a member of our excellent community. And I was running short on them, looking through my email to find some older ones that I missed, because I do miss some. Old Carol, come on, I'm sorry about that. But a whole bunch of you came through, and now I have so many to choose from. But keep them coming. Send me your pictures from nature throughout the year. I'd love to get them and share them with everybody else. And we all take joy in the time that you're spending outdoors in nature and hopefully connected to it. Hashtag vitamin N. Send them my way, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Also, Monday, I will be, July 26th, JL Covan and I are going to be doing the comedy, stand-up comedy in Boston at City Winery in Boston. Get your tickets now. I think there's a few tickets left, and there is a link for the tickets in the show notes. Hope to see you there. And, of course, I hope to see you this Thursday at our Hangout, which we do every Thursday at 8 for stand-up community members. If you're not already a subscriber and a member of our awesome community, sign up now. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic, or just go to the paid subscription link in the show notes. All right, Maura Quint, Glenn Kirschner coming up. But first, it's time to look at everything that happened yesterday and more. It's time for the last 24. All right, well, yesterday, stock markets started to crumble on warnings of the COVID Delta variant. And as a result, some people at least are saying that Fox News hosts started getting concerned for whatever reason, or maybe pressure to start convincing people to get vaccinated. And they haven't done a good enough job during their daytime morning program, and they certainly have done the exact opposite and fearmongered and told people not to get vaccinated on shows from Laura Ingraham to Tucker Carlson. But here's the Fox and the Friends, Steve Doocy and Brian Kilmeade, not seeing eye to eye on this. So it didn't go that well. Listen to this hilarious and enraging clip.
But listen, if you didn't get a vaccination, that's your choice. And if you did, like I did, and they did, and maybe you did, then you should not wear a mask.
All right, first of all, stop telling people what to do. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. That's it. We can quibble about making kids wear masks, or you can make fun of people for wearing masks outside or something like that, but it's the same thing as if you want to wear a watch, wear a watch. I don't give a shit if you wear a mask or not. Guys are always complaining about the freedom that they want and don't have. It's always only their own personal preferences. It's never real life or the freedom that other people want and actually don't have. Let's listen to more of this insanity.
And if you want to go cliff diving this weekend, you don't have to check with me. It seems a little dangerous, but I'm not going to judge you.
Well, we're all judging you, you epic shithead, Brian Kilmeade. Are you serious? Who the hell cares if someone jumps off a cliff? Does that have to do with anything? We're talking about a virus that infects people really easily, complete strangers that they're just near you. Dipshit.
And if you go ahead and put yourself in danger, if you feel as though this is not something for you, don't do it. But don't affect my life.
Dude, it's affecting your life if strangers you don't care about and don't like get COVID. Are you serious? It's still affecting your life. That's why we all have to work together.
99% of the people who are dying from COVID are unvaccinated.
That's
so
their choice.
They don't want to die.
I mean, he's definitely the dumbest person. Brian Kilmeade on TV. He really definitely is. It's their choice. Did you hear Ducey, who's just a smidge smarter? Oh, they don't want to die. That got a lot of play yesterday. It's their choice. No, their choice is not to die.
So they are, the administration and the government is saying we need the mask mandate to protect the unvaccinated.
That's not their job. It's not their job to protect anybody.
Well,
Yes, it is their job. It's literally the government's job to protect the public health of its citizens. Really, it's actually in the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish. Come on. This guy is really the dumbest. And he took every opportunity he could to sound as dumb as possible on yesterday's episode of Fox and Friends. Oh, that show is so easy to parody. And like I said, other Fox programming was following suit. John Roberts had Dr. Mark Siegel on, and neither of them, I think, have been great on this. But now they are started pushing for vaccinations full-throated. Full speed ahead on the vaccinations. All of a sudden, I wonder why.
Doc, one last quick question for you. With this Delta variant spreading across the country, and we see it's affecting the stock markets right now, how important is it for people to get vaccinated, and where can they get more information on where to get a shot?
It's very important that people get vaccinated because 2 shots of Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine is still giving you almost 90% protection against this and 95 to 100% protection against hospitalization. Hugely important. You can get your vaccine from a local pharmacy. Your physician can tell you where to get it. They're really all over the place. Very easy to get a vaccine right now. The public health centers all have it. There are vaccine centers still going. We're having a low compliance rate. The Delta variant needs to be a wake-up call to get vaccinated.
And as it says on the screen right underneath us, go to vaccines.gov for more info.
All right, so now they're giving out the website and everything over on Fox News. Though don't worry, when it came time for 8 p.m., the Tucker Carlson hour, and after Fox colleagues encouraged vaccines, he actually just told his viewers, you should ignore people giving you medical advice on television. Yep, he did. But here's the good news, and this is seriously good news. The guy after him hates him. Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson apparently don't like each other at all. And Sean Hannity gave a full-throated support endorsement for the vaccine. Take a listen to this.
Just like we've been saying, please take COVID seriously. I can't say it enough. Enough people have died. We don't need any more deaths. Research like crazy. Talk to your doctor, your doctors, medical professionals you trust based on your unique medical history, your current medical condition, and you and your doctor make a very important decision for your own safety. Take it seriously. You also have a right to medical privacy. Doctor-patient confidentiality is also important, and it absolutely makes sense for many Americans to get vaccinated. I believe in science. I believe in the science of vaccination.
Well, how about that? I guess Hannity doesn't want his audience to literally die. I mean, seriously. He's got a huge radio audience, TV audience. Doesn't want them dying off. Over on CNN, former Fox News reporter Carl Cameron called out Tucker Carlson for his vaccine propaganda. And it should be said, Carl Cameron also trying to clean up his own past, dirty, filthy, rotten things that he didn't say over at Fox News.
I think I know the answer, but I want to know from you, why are hosts like Tucker Carlson doing this?
It's about ratings.
Just money.
And ratings ultimately become revenue. And that's the name of the game. Whoever gets the most clicks on social media makes the most money, gets the most fame, gets the most attention. And that type of activity is not journalism. It's not news. It's gaslighting. It's propaganda. I mean, just last week, new infections went up 70%. And according to the CDC, the NIH, which oversees the CDC, it is absolutely 99.5% of those infections are people who haven't gotten vaccinated. I mean, come on. Anybody who disputes that sort of stuff is putting people's lives at risk and potentially killing them.
All right, and now I want to pivot over to another issue, another huge story yesterday, and I talk a lot about this with my first guest, Glenn Kirschner, today, coming up. But a guy named Paul Hodgkins became the first felony defendant sentenced in the Capitol insurrection of January 6th. He's a Tampa crane operator, pled guilty last month of one count of obstructing a joint session of Congress, and he was sentenced to only 8 months. I get into it with Glenn Kirschner, but I do have to mention this quote from Tommy Chung, who I love, of Cheech and Chong, of course. He wrote, "Damn, I got just 9 months for selling bongs." Yeah, a lot of people making that type of commentary that the sentence was not nearly harsh enough. But don't worry, we put together a 1-6 commission, or at least the House has, led by Nancy Pelosi and Democrats. And she's, of course, allowing Republicans to appoint members, 5 members to it. Unfortunately, the House Minority Leader and Trump sycophant Kevin McCarthy insisted on appointing 5 white guys, of course. Two of them are named Jim. And they were arguably part of the insurrection. Now they're going to investigate the crime that they encouraged. Deeply upsetting. But here is Jim Banks on Fox News with Chris Wallace back in May. He's now on the 1-6 commission.
All right, let me try to get at this a different way. Is Joe Biden the legitimate president of the United States?
Yes, Joe Biden was elected. He was inaugurated on January 20th, and he's our focus as the chairman of the Republican Study Committee. We meet on a weekly basis to counter the radical Biden agenda and push back with policies, talking points. And at this point, the Republican Study Committee is filling the void and providing our members in the House Republican Conference with what they need to push back against the Biden agenda. And that's the focus. Every day that we're focused on something else means that we're not focused on winning back the majority.
Reason I ask is I want to go back to your actions after the election in November. You joined more than 100 House Republicans supporting a Texas lawsuit to overturn the election results in other states. The Supreme Court refused to hear the case. Then you voted on January 6th to, quote, uphold the Constitution by challenging Biden victories in several states. Do you still question whether or not Joe Biden won the election fair and square and got over 270 electoral votes fair and square?
Yeah, Chris, I stand by my vote to object on January 6th. I stand by the Texas lawsuit because I have serious concerns about how the election in November was carried out. It's why I wrote a bill that's co-sponsored by nearly 100 of my colleagues to strengthen voter identification laws at the federal level and support those measures nationwide. And it's why I'm even more concerned about H.R. 1, the radical Democrat, their bill to nationalize and federalize elections, a very dangerous move forward, and that's what we should be focused on. And once again, when we're focused on beating Democrats, beating back the radical, dangerous Biden agenda, we should be focused on winning back the majority in the midterm election to save this country. And that's where most Republicans in the GOP conference are unified around that single mission and goal, and anything that distracts from it is going to hold us back from doing that.
All right, so now that guy is going to be investigating the insurrection. And guess who else is? Jim Jordan, Jim with the G. And here's a report and an opinion from Anderson Cooper, the most trusted name in cable news, segment from his show last night, where I think he's always keeping him honest on Anderson Cooper 360, the dumbest name in cable news.
There's more breaking news tonight. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy tonight named his picks for the Select Committee on January 6th attack on the Capitol. No surprise, some of his choices wanted the same outcome, though certainly by different means, as the rioters did. They wanted to overturn election results. In fact, they voted to. One even boasted about it. Troy Nels tweeting in January, quote, "I'm proudly announcing I will object to the counting of electoral votes in disputed states tomorrow. You sent me to Congress to fight for President Trump and election integrity, and that's exactly what I'm doing." More now on all this from CNN's Ryan Nobles tonight at the Capitol. So, Ryan, 3 of the 5 selections voted against certifying the election. Congressman Jim Jordan actually participated in a so-called Stop the Steal rally 2 days after the election. I also want to play, just for our viewers, something he said about the results.
I don't know how you can ever convince me that President Trump didn't actually win this thing based on all the things you see.
I mean, isn't that exactly what drove the insurrection?
Well, there is a pretty compelling body of evidence that says just that, Anderson, and that is part of what this select committee's task is to do, is to connect those dots to figure out what went wrong here on January 6th and then come up with solutions to prevent it from ever happening in the future. And that's why there was a lot of concern about the picks that Kevin McCarthy was going to make to this panel. And Jim Jordan's name certainly jumps off the page as someone who has been a consistent and loyal defender of the former president, despite his inaccurate rhetoric about the 2020 election and the fact that he continues to peddle those lies. In fact, listen to what Jordan said was at the top of his mind about his appointment to this committee when we caught up with him this afternoon.
We know what this is about. This is about going after President Trump. You know, I mean, the Democrats, they don't want to talk about anything else, so they got to talk about this.
So he's talking about President Trump. He's worried that this is just going to be a committee that only is trying to go after President Trump and nothing else. So it shows you his mindset going in to this process, Anderson.
Speaker Pelosi has the ability to veto any of these picks. Is there any reason to think she will?
So that is the open question here tonight, and we talked to 3 or 4 different members, the Democratic members of the Select Committee, and each one of them said, to be clear, these are not the official names yet because Speaker Pelosi has that veto power, and her office told me tonight that she is reviewing those picks right now, that she has not officially confirmed that they will be a part of the panel. But, Anderson, it's important to point out that the way that Kevin McCarthy played this, releasing the names to the public first, getting them out there for them to be debated, it would be very difficult for her to veto one of these picks. Republicans could turn that into a whole political talking point. They could raise money on it if someone like Jim Jordan is removed from this committee. So I'd be very surprised if she takes that step, but it is still an option that she has at her disposal.
All right, good reporting from CNN, and that gives you some context there. Now let's go to the White House press briefing where Steve Doocy's even dumber son, Peter Doocy, is there every day to ask a question to Jen Psaki about why Joe Biden doesn't talk about or call up Donald Trump anymore. And here he is in perfect form. And once again, getting dunked on by the White House press secretary.
On vaccine hesitancy, as COVID-19 cases rise, if this is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated and you guys are having a hard time getting a certain part of the population to go get the shot, would President Biden ever call former President Trump and say, I need your help, let's cut a PSA and tell people to go do it?
Well, first, I would say that what we've seen in our data is that the most trusted voices are local officials, doctors, medical experts, civic leaders, clergy from time to time. And that is where we've really invested our funding and our resources. We've seen almost every former president play a role in putting out a PSA, making sure people understood in the country that the vaccine is safe and effective. We don't believe that requires an embroidered invitation to be a part of. But certainly any role of anyone who has a platform where they can provide information to the public that the vaccine is safe, it is effective. We don't see this as a political issue. We'd certainly welcome that engagement.
All right, there you go. So stupid. Okay, let's move on to the president himself. Joe Biden gave a speech yesterday about the economy and took questions from reporters as well. You can always watch the whole thing. I think it's always good to see these important comments in full context. And I try to give you a lot of the clips here, often more than 30 seconds when I think it's really important. Well, here is a little bit of Joe Biden opening up, talking about the economy rebounding and trying to comfort the American public, saying inflation and price increases are temporary, and we saw that coming. Here he is, though, talking about his predecessor and his critics.
Before I took office, there was a lot of folks out there making some pretty bold predictions about how things would turn out. You might remember some of the predictions that if I became president, we'd, quote, see a depression, the likes of which we've never seen, end of quote. Well, it's true that the economy was sputtering before I got here, adding only 60,000 jobs per month or for 3 months before I was sworn in. But now, 6 months later, we've changed that. We've gone from 60,000 jobs per month to 60,000 jobs every 3 days, more than 600,000 jobs per month since I took office, more than 3 million new jobs all told. That's the fastest growth, I'm told, at this point in any administration's history. Another prediction that is my favorite one, I must add, is that if I got elected, I'd bring the end to capitalism. I never understood that one, but we've heard an awful lot. Well, in 6 months into my administration, the U.S. economy has experienced the highest economic growth rate in nearly 40 years.
Nearly 40 years. All right, there is our President Joe Biden. He was also asked about his comments the day before saying Facebook is literally killing people, and he had to walk that back, and a reporter gave him the opportunity to do that. Here it is.
Let me be precisely what I said. I'm glad you asked me that question. One, I had just read that on the Facebook pointed out that it was pointed out that Facebook, of all the misinformation, 60% of the misinformation came from 12 individuals. That's what the article said. So I was asked that question about what do I think is happening. Facebook isn't killing people. These 12 people are out there giving misinformation. Anyone listening to it is getting hurt by it. It's killing people. It's bad information. My hope is that Facebook, instead of taking it personally that somehow I'm saying Facebook is killing people, that they would do something about the misinformation, the outrageous misinformation about the vaccine. That's what I meant.
Have they done enough, in your opinion, to stop?
I haven't, to be completely honest with you, I don't know if they did anything today. Up to over the weekend, I don't think they had, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Will you hold them accountable if they don't do more to stop the spread?
When you say hold accountable, I just want to, I'm not trying to hold people. I'm trying to make people to look at themselves, look in the mirror. Think about that misinformation going to your son, your daughter, your relative, someone you love. That's what I'm asking, all the way in the back.
All right, a lot more news where that came from. A lot of questions about the future of the economy and the stock market and your investment and your home and retirement and everything else. But I do want to get to your voting rights, which I think is pretty important as well. Here is Senator Raphael Warnock talking about that yesterday on the Senate floor.
Your vote is your voice. Your voice is about your human dignity. Fight for voting rights is to fight for human rights. There's nothing more noble, more important for us to do in a moment like this. And sadly, what we're seeing in Georgia is an attempt to deny certain people the ability to have their voices heard in our democracy. As I've said time and time again, some people don't want some people to vote. So they're trying to deny access to the ballot, to set up hurdles that voters have to cross as if voting is a privilege and not a right.
So much more from the last 24, but I am out of time for that part of the show, and now it's time to get to all the other headlines I can, rapid-fire style. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, for the news dump, and we've got a new jingle sent our way, written by Carl in New Jersey. He sent it to Pete Coe, who performed it. Let's take a listen. Let me press record. All right, here we go.
Hiker running in the woods trips over a stump. She's stumbling down a cliff on today's news dump.
Oh my goodness! This poor hiker is fallen. I want to know what happened. Did he say it was a woman? Let me listen to that again.
Hiker running in the woods trips over a stump. She's stumbling down a
dear,
cliff
yeah,
on
it's a-
today's news dump.
It's a woman that's fallen down the cliff. There's a lady that fell down the cliff. Somebody help her. For God's sake, I'm stuck in my shed. Thank you, Carl, for the news dump jingle. And as always, Pico, for the performance. You guys are hilarious. All right, let's start with an ice cream story of sorts. One of the most famous brands of ice cream in the world, Ben & Jerry's, says they have decided to stop selling their ice cream in the West Bank in East Jerusalem. Ben & Jerry's says it's going to stop selling its ice cream in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and contest East Jerusalem, saying the sales in the territory sought by the Palestinians are inconsistent with our values. Very political company, but that's a pretty big deal for Ben & Jerry's to make that announcement. We'll see what happens with their ice cream sales. May I suggest the flavor West Bank coffee chip? Does that sound good to anybody? Sorry. All right, let's move on to this good news. The Pentagon is going to temporarily house Afghan workers who aided the U.S. military or diplomatic missions and are trying to leave the country at Fort Lee, which is an Army installation in central Virginia, while they complete the application process for a special visa, according to the State Department. 2,500 Afghan visa seekers will be housed at this U.S. military installation, and we should get all of them here and safe because they risked their lives for Americans. And regardless of what you think of the politics of the war, if you give someone your word and they work with you, you should take care of them. So we've left so many people just hanging, and many of them were slaughtered after we abandoned them, including Afghanistan, and we need to do the right thing here. So this is just a start. Following another violent weekend in Chicago in which 56 people were shot, 11 were killed, the Chicago Police Department has announced a new strategy to combat gun violence. The new investigations team aims to get to the gun before it hits the streets. The police department is going to create a team of 50 officers to target gun traffickers, straw buyers, unscrupulous licensed firearms dealers, and anyone who facilitates the flow of illegal guns into the city. Well, good luck with that. Psst, I think they're coming from Indiana. The death toll from the catastrophic flooding in Europe is up to at least 199, with hard-hit West Germany and Belgium reeling from the devastation. Nearly 300 people remain unaccounted for in Germany and Belgium, according to officials. Here's a story. One of my closest friends is personally heavily involved with, of course, Dr. Aaron Carroll at Indiana University, who led their mitigation efforts to fight COVID-19 and had an amazing record. They decided at the University of Indiana, where he is the chief medical officer, I think now, that they were going to enforce mandates that you had to be vaccinated to be a student at Indiana University. And guess what? They were sued. They were sued by a whole bunch of students that didn't like that idea, and a federal judge has ruled against the students who argued that Indiana University's requirement for students and staff to receive COVID vaccines violated both state law and the Constitution. The judge declined to block the mandate, saying the balance of harms and public interest favor Indiana University, and that's a major precedent, an important decision. Congratulations to my friend Dr. Carroll, who's on vacation with his family, a well-deserved vacation, I might add. And I love this story coming out of Australia, where a high-profile British commentator who traveled to Australia, then mocked that nation's COVID restrictions, was deported back home on Monday, according to the BBC. Katie Hopkins on Friday posted a since-deleted video on Instagram boasting that she intended to flout rules at her Sydney hotel by greeting staffers who delivered food naked and without a mask. Well, as I know very well because I talk to my buddy there every day, David Campbell, Sydney's in lockdown, and they have rules in place because of fast-spreading Delta variant. Mask guests are supposed to wait at least 30 seconds before opening their doors when meals are delivered. And, well, this woman didn't like it, and she said she didn't like it, and she wasn't going to follow those rules, and they sent her home back to England. And I just thought that was hilarious. Bye-bye. Goodbye, mate. Uh-oh, this is bad news. There's been shortages of all kinds of products, from microchips to lumber, and things are changing, and chains of custody and procurement procedures are apparently catching up, but not everywhere and not all the time. Taco Bell has been hit by a nationwide shortage of ingredients from chicken to beef to even tortillas. Everybody's pretty fired up that Taco Bell doesn't have their favorite menu items, apparently. Someone tweeting, for anyone craving Taco Bell tonight, I'll save you the drive. They don't have chicken or beef, national shortage or something. I just ate black beans and a hard shell. Was not worth it. No, it is not. Sorry to hear that to the Taco Bell lovers. Of course, I haven't gotten meat from Taco Bell since I got salmonella from Taco Bell in like 1993. Thank you very much. I'm good. And the Sports Illustrated swimsuit has their first trans cover star. How about that? How does that make you feel? If it makes you feel uncomfortable or upset, then you're probably on the wrong side of things. Also, a player who has made NHL history by coming out as gay. Luke Prokop has come out as gay and made history for the Nashville Predators. He's a prospect, apparently, but he's becoming the first active player under contract in the National Hockey League to do so. He's 19 years old, and he wrote in an Instagram post, "It's been quite a journey to get to this point in my life, but I could not be happier with my decision to come out. From a young age, I've dreamed of being an NHL player, and I believe that living my authentic life will allow me to bring my whole self to the rink and improve my chances of fulfilling my dreams." Oh my gosh, God love him. I hope they don't hit him even harder on the ice because of that. But I fear they might, because you don't need much of a reason in the brutal sport of hockey, where, all due respect to my hockey fans and former players, a lot of cave people, a lot of cavemen in that sport, let me tell you. So good luck, man. That's very, very brave, seriously, because it's a dangerous sport, and you don't need any other reason to get pounded on the ice. That's a terrible choice of words, but I didn't know what else to say. Anyway, that's awesome. And that is your news dump. Thank you very much. And I've got two awesome guest interviews coming up right now. I had a hilarious, she always makes me laugh so hard. She's so smart, so well-spoken, so well thought out and original. Maura Quint is going to join me, Executive Director of Tax March. That is coming up. And just before that, Glenn Kirschner. And before that, I got to tell you about a great service that I highly recommend. Very excited to be working with them and having them as a sponsor for the show, because if you like cannabis, like I like cannabis, and if you like saving money, like I like saving money, then you're going to love VeryHeal.com/Pete. So here's the deal with VeryHeal. You know, medical marijuana is now legal in 36 states. It might be legal everywhere soon. I hope it is. And it's probably legal in your state. But if you're thinking about getting a medical marijuana card, the easiest way to do it is through VeryHeal. You just go to VeryHeal.com/Pete. That's VeryHeal.com/Pete. That's me. You pre-qualify online and you meet with a licensed medical marijuana doctor online, on demand, privately. Or you can try to find a doctor in your area. You can then make an appointment and waste gas, drive their office, sit in a waiting room with masked strangers wondering, why didn't I just do this online? With VeryHeal. And if you do it on your own, you could end up paying twice as much, most importantly. With VeryHeal, you'll save. And if for whatever reason you're not approved for your medical marijuana card, VeryHeal gives you a full refund. Think you could get a full refund from a local doc? I don't think so. Think again, my friends. See, VeryHeal's got a ton of great reviews from 150,000 people who've already used it, including a lot of listeners. And so go to VeryHeal right now to get your medical marijuana card. You pre-qualify online, less than 5 minutes, anytime, 24/7. And if you live in a state where recreational cannabis is legal, you are going to still want your medical marijuana card to avoid paying those crazy high taxes that recreational users have to pay. You can also buy more, grow more, and possess more than recreational users as well. And don't I know it? So many good reasons to visit VeryHeal.com/Pete. And even if you don't use cannabis, just go to VeryHeal.com/Pete to support me and this show if you aren't already. So that's VeryHeal, VeryHeal.com/Pete. Thank you. All right. Now, let's get to my first guest of the show. He is a former federal prosecutor for 30 years. He's an MSNBC columnist and legal analyst.
He's got his own YouTube channel and show that he posts clips, videos every day. Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner. He's on Twitter at Glenn Kirschner, too. You can support him on Patreon. And I just always love talking to Glenn. We covered a lot of ground in this conversation. I started by asking him about COVID, ended by asking him about being a grandpa, and we talked about a lot of legal matters and why justice matters all the way in between. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the great Glenn Kirschner. It's the Kirschner Report here on Stand Up.
All right, it's been far too long since I got the opportunity to talk with and then share my conversation with the great Glenn Kirschner, who I've just told you all about, who is kicking ass with his own media outlet. I love that every day we get to hear and even see. You're a handsome man. And thank you for, using the same quality lighting and sound that you just did on MSNBC with me as you slum it with me in the shed. I appreciate that level of respect.
And I pulled my tie off. I threw my jacket off. It's I had a quick shot. It's all.
Speaking of shots, real quick, let's get outside your wheelhouse for a second. Get your take on the vaccination drive. We were doing so good, Glenn. What happened?
There are still some knuckleheads in some states that are, like Florida, DeSantis, that are basically urging their citizens not to get the vaccine. And what we're seeing is the folks who are being hospitalized with COVID, almost 100% of them are unvaccinated. Yeah. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist. It's like, get the vaccine, you're going to be protected. If you don't get it, you're taking your chances. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I understand being skeptical of government. I'm skeptical of government. But this one is a no-brainer. So it really is disappointing, and I hope people will wise up and everybody will start getting the vaccine.
Do you know anybody in your life, without naming names, your friends or family members, that is like anti-vax that you've gotten into a discussion with? Have you had to try to convince anybody?
Not really. I have people in my family who are skeptical of government, and I think it's smart to be skeptical of government. Mm-hmm. But, nobody who is willing to kind of risk their own health and say, you know what, I'll take my chances with a deadly pandemic rather than getting a vaccine. I've had similar vaccines all my life. Why are you going to stop now? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
All right. Well, I want to talk to you about this big case from we're going to pretend that this is a lot like airing live, I guess, on Tuesday, but actually taping it on Monday. When you followed this today, Glenn. Here is USA Today. A Florida man, it's always funny, Florida man became the first felon sentenced Monday for his role in the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, receiving 8 months in prison and being ordered to pay $2,000 in restitution for a portion of the damage to the building. He is from Tampa. He faced sentencing guidelines of 15 to 21 months in prison after pleading guilty to obstruction to an official proceeding for interrupting Congress's counting of electoral votes. And it seems like this guy also spent 15 minutes in the Senate chamber holding a flag supporting Donald Trump and taking pictures. And so there's a lot of analysis here, but it seems like what I'm seeing online, the reaction is that this guy got a light sentence. The blame is mostly being put on the judge. And then everybody's comparing all these other people who are in prison for far less things, which is something that us non-legal people always do. So you watch this, you tweeted about it. What's your analysis?
Yeah, I listened to the whole live stream and everything was going exactly as I had expected until all of a sudden Judge Randy Moss, said 8 months in prison when everybody was expecting him to say 18 months in prison. And, that has some important implications. But let me do the pros and then the cons of how the Hodgkins case unfolded. There's a really important pro, and that is the prosecutors had him plead guilty to obstructing a congressional proceeding, specifically obstructing the certification of the election results. Why is that plea important? Well, that's not trespass. That's not assault. That's not damaging government property. That is this felon doing precisely what Donald Trump told him to do on January 6th. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "Go down to the U.S. Capitol and stop." Now, Donald Trump used the word steal, but we all know there was no steal. This was Donald Trump telling his angry mob, go to the Capitol and stop the certification of the election. And now somebody who did precisely what he was instructed to do by Donald Trump is a convicted felon for it and will spend 8 months in prison. Pete, I put together conspiracy cases. This is a building block guilty plea, because now they can use this. They can put other bricks in the wall. They can make their way up the pyramid to the funders, to the organizers, and most importantly, to the insider-in-chief, Donald Trump. That's a significant pro. That's the upside of what we saw culminate today. Now, let's talk about the con. The sentence that this judge imposed is obscene, and here's why I say that. We all operate under the federal sentencing guidelines, right? It is a standard, uniform set of rules. The sentencing guidelines in this case said Hodgkins should do between 15 and 21 months in prison, right? And the prosecutors made very compelling arguments, and they landed on an 18-month sentencing recommendation to the judge. The judge is talking a big game, talking about how dangerous this is. It's impacting not only our democracy, but our credibility around the world when we're urging other countries to try this, this experiment called democracy. And then the judge says 8 months. I thought I misheard him. I thought he said 18 months. No, he said 8. So here's what he did. He said the least severe, the least aggravating obstruction of Congress charge under the guidelines would warrant 15 months in prison. He said, I'm going to go 7 months below that for no earthly reason. What does that do? That sends the signal to the 500 plus other insurrectionists pending trial that, you know what, maybe we should all take our chances, go to trial, not cooperate, not provide the prosecutors with information about the crimes of others, because this judge just set a very low and lenient bar for a really consequential crime. I don't understand it. Judge Moss did a little bit of damage today to our ability to move in the direction of a healthy democracy. I don't know why. We will survive this. My friends and former colleagues at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office who are prosecuting these cases will continue to work, will continue to build. But Judge Moss, I think what he did today was a bit of an insult to the American people and a bit damaging to our democracy.
Yeah. I don't want to say that's an understatement because I don't understand the perspective that you have in terms of the sentencing guidelines. But when you do look at some of these people that are going to prison for far less, issues, some of which aren't even illegal anymore, marijuana charges and stuff. It's just, this guy was in the United States Senate. He was part of an insurrection. To the pros that you mentioned, to the positive thing, you talk about building a case here, taking down some of these small-time guys. But this is another thing that a lot of people are concerned about, the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland, that they're not going to go after the big fish here. You've prosecuted all types of these organizations and movements and crimes throughout your career. I mean, how can you be sure that that's what this is, that they're taking these small guys down to make a larger case? What evidence or data or information do you have that makes you think that that's what this is about versus just holding people responsible for the crimes that they committed on January 6th?
I mean, a couple of data points. Most importantly, we saw Donald Trump live on TV urging people to go stop the certification of the election's results. That is inciting an insurrection, and we can prove it. I could prove it in 30 minutes in front of a D.C. jury. The evidence is there. Whether the political will is there, that's another question. What's another important data point, though, that they're working their way up? There was some reporting a few weeks back that when the defendants, when the insurrectionists are being arrested by the FBI, and they're still locking up about 3 a day on average, the case continues to build. The first thing that the FBI agents do, as is required, is they read them their Miranda rights. If they waive the Miranda rights, you got the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you free of charge, etc. If they waive their rights and agree to be interviewed or interrogated, and most of them do waive their rights, the FBI is asking them questions that we learned include, do you know any members of Congress? Did you communicate with any members of Congress or staff members before, during, or after the insurrection? That's a huge data point that proves the FBI is looking at the potential complicity of members of Congress. They're working their way up the criminal food chain. You don't ask that question sort of casually or willy-nilly. If you're the FBI, that is a considered line of interrogation that you believe is important and warranted by the evidence. And frankly, they already know the answers to those questions before they ask the defendants that they lock up, because they have their phone records and their text messages and their cell site data and their social media posts. So they are investigating their way up the criminal food chain. We just need to have the political will to bring charges against criminal politicians. That's something we are not very good at.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. No, I guess I don't have to, because the point that you're making, if I'm understanding you, is that they're asking questions that they already know the answer to. Just like on TV and the movies, because they actually have this information. They say, listen, we know who you talk to. And we're going to ask you right now, did you talk to any congressmen and if they know that they talked to Paul Gosar or Lauren Boebert or any of these people who might have shown them around or been, held the door open, told them where Nancy Pelosi's office is, et cetera, and so on, these types of things, if that adds up and they find out that there is an actual congressman that's implicated in this crime somehow, some way, then you're saying the question is it Department of Justice or the D.C. Attorney's Office that you mentioned have whose decision is it then to say, listen, we got a case against this congressman. He was directly involved in that. Then they have a conversation about whether or not they're going to arrest the guy? They're going to charge the guy?
Yeah, that'll be vetted up through the highest echelons of the Department of Justice leadership, including Merrick Garland, I believe, when it comes to questions about, listen, we saw Donald Trump and Don Jr. and Rudy Giuliani and Mo Brooks incite the insurrection in real time. Do we have enough evidence? The answer is inarguably yes. Do we have the political will to do it? That's a question that, frankly, shouldn't even be asked, because we don't ask that with every, carjacker or drug dealer or sexual offender. We don't say, well, do we have the political? No, if you have the evidence, you charge people. And Pete, we don't become a banana republic by charging criminal politicians for their crimes. We become a banana republic by not charging criminal politicians for their crimes. This is not rocket science. You charge people if the evidence supports criminal charges, regardless of whether they ever held public office.
So, but is there anything that makes you think at this point? I know that you initially thought that Merrick Garland, you hoped certainly that he would hold powerful people accountable. Is there anything that makes you think that he's going to? Because it seems like things keep happening. Today, it was Wilbur Ross, former Commerce Secretary, whole bunch of evidence of corruption against him. And a lot of people are saying there's way too much here about this guy. And you know that, and you've talked about and made so many videos and written articles about so many other people in the administration that are guilty of all kinds of other federal charges and crimes. But everybody's, apparently Department of Justice, they're not going to charge Wilbur Ross. What evidence or what do you think, what's your opinion right now in terms of this DOJ led by this Attorney General Merrick Garland holding powerful people accountable?
So Merrick Garland has made decisions on both sides of the ledger. Some of his decisions I have applauded and have been encouraged by, like when he's opening pattern and practice investigations into racist police departments. He has done that with respect to a number of police departments. When he brought federal criminal charges against the police officers who murdered, I use that word advisedly, George Floyd, I was encouraged by that. But then I was sickened by some of his decisions, like when he continues to take up for Donald Trump in the E. Jean Carroll litigation. That's an abomination because that's a discretionary decision. That decision was not required by any law or court opinion. He made the discretionary decision to protect the institution of the presidency, and that took the form of continuing to take up for Donald Trump in the E. Jean Carroll defamation suit. That's an abomination. So, but here's the thing. All of this stuff, I know how long it takes to thoroughly, professionally investigate big ticket crime. And there is no bigger crime than the insurrection. So that's going to take some time to work its way up to the top. I'm willing to give Merrick Garland that time. But let me tell you, Pete, if we don't see indictments drop on the heads of Matt Gaetz and Rudy Giuliani, and I want to see Roger Stone assuming they have the evidence, and I believe they do have the evidence against those gentlemen. And if they don't, I'll be the first one saying, then you all better not charge them, because you only charge if you have enough evidence. But I believe they do, right? So we have to start to see some consequential indictments handed down by the Department of Justice. That will go a long way to reassuring the American people that Merrick Garland meant what he said in his confirmation hearing when he said, this country took my family in. We were fleeing persecution. We were fleeing anti-Semitism, and America gave us safe haven. I feel an obligation to pay back. Well, Mr. Attorney General, one of the ways you can pay back is by protecting our families, because we're adrift, and Donald Trump continues to build toward insurrection 2.0. We're adrift. We need accountability. Protect our families now. That is my challenge to him.
What makes you think, if anything, that he's going to? You called this decision on the E. Jean Carroll case an abomination. I love what he said in his confirmation hearing. You just quoted it so well. I think that's so important. But I mean, you've been screaming every day about holding powerful people accountable. You've been helping us understand the legal underpinnings of why Rudy Giuliani, why Roger Stone, why Donald Trump or anybody else should be held responsible, should be prosecuted, that there's evidence to prosecute them. And yet it doesn't seem like there's going to be the political will. And so my question, again, to pin you down, what would the timeline be? Because another thing you often say in your videos outside of justice matters is be patient. So how patient should we be? Is this probably has you, even with all your 30 years of experience, did you ever come anywhere close to a thing where there'd be like 500 arrests for one event? And I think also learned from you, there's like 3 a day still. 6 months after, they're still arresting people from the insurrection. Like, how long should this take? Have you ever seen anything like this? Has anyone?
Yeah, the insurrection case is enormous, and it's going to continue to take a long time, even before we see charges for the funders, the organizers, and the inciters. And I hope we do. And I'll talk about why I think we will in a second. But let me talk about that now. I believe Merrick Garland when he weeps openly, and I've seen him do it twice, once during his confirmation hearing and once in an interview with the journalist. He weeps openly about how strongly he feels about this nation protecting his family, shielding his family, giving his family safe harbor. I believe him to his core. I believe he's a good and honorable man. I cannot conceive, Pete, and maybe I'm hopelessly naive, I cannot conceive of Merrick Garland and his right-hand woman, Lisa Monaco, who is a former prosecutor in my office, who, I know and is a very good, strong, honorable, circumspect prosecutor. I can't conceive of them letting Donald Trump bring the American experiment to an end. Because if we don't hold Donald Trump and the rest of them, Rudy Giuliani and, Matt Gaetz is less, he's still a concern. I don't think he is the threat to democracy that these other people are. If we don't hold them accountable, I do think we're slouching toward the end of our democracy. And I find it impossible, even though I'm frustrated, even though it's taking too long, I find it impossible that the good people at the Department of Justice will let the likes of Donald Trump, mope that he is, bring our democratic experiment to an end. I don't see it happening. What I'm most frustrated about at this moment are the 10 obstruction of justice counts that Bob Mueller thoroughly investigated, documented, and said, here they are. Here's the evidence. You can prosecute him the day he leaves office. No further investigation is necessary to indict those charges. That has me frustrated because I don't understand why those charges haven't been brought. And the Department of Justice owes we the people an explanation, I believe, for why, what they're doing without compromising ongoing investigations and why there haven't been any criminal charges in a case that was ready to be charged the day Donald Trump left office.
So if I'm you, and I'm being dead serious here, you're a pretty prominent voice now. And you mentioned Lisa Monaco, who you know. You're out here publicly saying these things on MSNBC, on your YouTube channel and podcast now. And you did a video recently about Mark Milley and everything that we've just learned about him. One of the things that we learned, apparently, was that a friend from the outside, told Mark Milley he's like the only guy standing in between Trump and fascism and authoritarianism.
And I kind of, a lot of us poo-pooed that. Like, really? Someone from the outside had to tell you, like, you didn't know that, like, 6 months ago, 4 years ago? Nonetheless, why can't Glenn Kirschner reach out to Elisa Monaco or anybody else that you know in DOJ and send a similar message? Or are senators ever reaching out to you? Because the bottom line is, I would much rather hear you question the attorney general. Why aren't you prosecuting this? You won't get to because you're not a senator. There's a lot of shitty Democratic senators that can barely put a sentence together. I won't name the names. I don't want to be a jerk. But there's some pretty old people. They're not all there. Like, is anybody reaching out to Glenn Kirschner, or are you reaching out to anybody saying, this is what you have to ask, this is what you have to do? Because I'm talking to you, you're talking to them. You're a powerful, influential, passionate guy. That's what I want to hear.
You know what? And I don't believe, it's not my place to talk to the folks who are presently at the Department of Justice. Do I have tons of friends and former colleagues who are there that I keep in touch with? Yes. They know, Pete, precisely what I'm saying. They don't need me to explain why the Mueller case yielded criminal charges that should be brought right now. So, I don't think my voice would necessarily inform them.
Well, I understand
what
that.
I don't understand. Good.
Well, I was just going to say, because what you said is justice matters. And if we're not going to get justice, we should at least get an explanation as to why someone wasn't prosecuted. So while you might not think it's appropriate to reach out to them, you do deserve, and so do the people that are following you and listening to you and have a lot of faith in you like me, an explanation for why someone isn't prosecuted the way that you've been demanding that they should. They should at least give that publicly, not only to you, but publicly to everybody.
Not only should they give us that publicly, I think we deserve reassurance that they are on the job. So, for example, you saw when the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack unfolded. Terrifying. What did the Department of Justice do? They ran to the cameras. They ran to the microphones. Even though that was an ongoing investigation in its infancy, they said, we're on top of it. We're on top of it. We've clawed back a bunch of the money that was paid in ransomware. Whose money was it? The Koch brothers' money. We clawed back American people, be reassured, we're on it. Your infrastructure is secure. You know what, Pete? I'm less concerned about our infrastructure and whether the oil is flowing and whether I have to wait on long lines to gas up my car. I'm less concerned about that than I am that the Department of Justice is on top of the people who just incited an attempt to overthrow our democracy. That is the juxtaposition of those two things that irritate the heck out of me. Please reassure us that you're on top of the people trying to bring an end to our democracy. You don't have to compromise details of your pending investigation, but you did it in the ransomware attack, and I was happy to have that information, right? How about you do it on the larger question of whether our democracy will survive? We deserve that.
I think that you should be getting questions to senators who will be questioning the attorney general. I think that you should be sending them. Sometimes I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt. Think they're smart. Think they have a really good team and then they ask the dumbest question, a question that is so stupid and such a waste of time. And you're thinking, did no one suggest a question? That's what you're asking? And then there are some that are obviously really effective. I'm not going to say this about all of them, but I don't know. I hate to think that there's a question that you would have of Merrick Garland wanting an explanation for this or that doesn't get asked.
At the end of the day, everybody asking the questions in Congress, they're still politicians. And I'm not trying to criticize them or mock them. But, you have a Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who just, I think, is remarkable in the issues that he surfaces. But most of them are politicians, and they get their 5 minutes of questions. And most of them want the focus to be on them, not on the information that they can draw out of the witness that they're questioning. So that's part of the downfall of our system.
You can be both. I mean, Kamala Harris pulled it off quite well, as you talked about a lot. She's a consummate politician, which is why she's the vice president.
And she also held Bill Barr and others' feet to the fire, as I think you gave her a lot of credit for at the time. And
I did. I agree. She dragged perjury out of Bill Barr, which is another thing I'd like to see prosecuted. You know, when Bill Barr was confronted with the question, did Trump or anybody at the White House ask you to open an investigation? He hemmed and hawed and pretended he didn't understand the word grapple or suggested. And then he refused. And then he lied, because then he said, I don't know, because he got frustrated and he didn't want to tell the truth. I don't know is a lie. It's not a perjury-proof answer, because he did know. That's what makes it perjury. Again, that's an easy case to prove. You have to have the political will to bring it.
So finally, what is what would be a timeline you would think would be appropriate for, what about Matt Gaetz? Like, how has this guy not been indicted? I have no idea what's going on. I mean, I don't pay close attention, but I feel like, and sometimes there's a lot of media hype, which is understandable given he's a congressman and the allegations against him are pretty crazy, and he's brought so much attention to himself. So it's like, I understand the firestorm of media around talking about him, and whatever, it is what it is. But how long should something like that take if the evidence that you and others said, is there, seems to be there for a guy like that?
It shouldn't take as long as it's taking. And two things about that. One, Joel Greenberg, if he's a star witness, he is about as ugly a star witness as you're going to get. If you've noticed the little round bruises that he has all over his body, Joel Greenberg, that's because people will only touch him with the end of a 10-foot pole, right? He's that ugly. He is that ugly a witness. So I hope they have more than Joel Greenberg's word. I assume they do, because of what a reckless character Matt Gaetz is. They have, payment receipts and all this for college tuition for young girls and all. So, but it's taking longer than it should take. But here's the phenomenon, Pete, and I can say this because I was a career federal prosecutor. Prosecutors will investigate cases until they believe they've built the perfect case, and they will wait to bring charges too long, in my estimation, and public safety will suffer. Right now, they can investigate Donald Trump forever trying to build a perfect case, but our democracy is on fire, and Donald Trump continues to pour gas on the fire at his hate rallies. He's recruiting his second set of foot soldiers for Insurrection 2.0. Public safety is at risk. We need to indict the man and change the narrative, because that will shut these politicians up about the big lie quicker than anything else if you start bringing criminal charges, because these politicians are weak and they're scared. They're not strong and brave. And the minute somebody gets charged for crimes they committed that involve the big lie, they're all going to shut up. The narrative will change. That's what needs to be done.
All right, let's end on a very positive personal note. You, sir, announced recently publicly you have become a grandfather. And I wanted to just ask you how that feels, what that's like. Explain it. All grandfathers, my dad knows, my mom understands this. Your parents did, I'm sure. You have 74 kids. How do you describe to me a guy who's got teenage daughters? Like, what is that? What does it mean to become a grandfather? What's the difference there than becoming a father?
It's all the upside with none of the responsibility. So, it's funny because my daughter and my son-in-law lived in San Francisco for years and years and years. And about a month before Kate, my oldest daughter, was going to give birth, they decided to move to Silver Spring. So they're just right up the road from me. And I told them, listen, we're so close now, you understand we're going to have to set some boundaries. So I'm only going to visit you 5 days a week to see my granddaughter. And her name is Paz, P-A-Z, and I am in love. And all I want to do is hold her and look at her. And then when her diaper needs to be changed, hand her off to my son-in-law. So really, it's all the upside. It's instant love the minute you hold your first grandchild. And it just kind of expands your world in a way that is hard to describe, but I think all grandparents kind of get it as soon as they hold their first grandchild.
I notice you're selling merch now. Will there be a Justice Matters onesie?
So, my friends, I hate to use the word followers because I don't like that word.
I agree with you. Yeah, they're your friends. They are legitimately your friends.
They're my Team Justice friends. They're my Team Justice members.
Your community
that's what they
that you created. Yeah.
Somebody made a Team Justice onesie that's about this big for my granddaughter,
that's
and
great.
she is now
that's so
wearing
great.
it from time to time. Yeah.
What a wonderful thing it is, huh? This community that you created, that I created. These people that they relate to you, and they're your friends. They really are. You feel, great talking to him and being supported by him. That's awesome, man. I'm psyched for you.
Team Justice is strong and fierce. I learn as much from them. We do his 2-hour Zoom chat every Sunday night. Yep. We strategize about how we can impact what's going on in the states with respect to voter suppression. We come up with projects. We then implement those projects. I mean, it is an important community, and in our own way, we're out there battling for justice every day. These are great folks.
Thank you very much for talking to me today. As always, my friend, it's so great talking to you, and I really appreciate your time and hearing from you. Keep up the great work.
Great being with you, Pete.
And there he goes. Please let him know that you heard him here on the show, and thank him for joining me on Twitter. You can find him, Glenn Kirschner 2. Follow and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to the podcast. Support him on Patreon. And buy his merch. Support Glenn. Great guy, great friend, and always happy to have him here on the show. Now time to get to my second guest, and we love when she joins us. She is hilarious. She is brilliant. She is so well-spoken, and was one of the first people I wanted to work with when I started this project. And I'm still hoping to do more with her. As well as people like Christian Finnegan. She's just so great at putting things into perspective and, like I said, hilarious. She is the executive director of Tax March. You should definitely go check them out and send a donation to Tax March, taxmarch.org. She's amazing on Twitter, one of the best people, one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter, at Behind Your Back on Twitter. Always great when I get her to join me here on the conversation that we have. She's a contributor to The Onion, Words at McSweeney's, The New Yorker, and more. And I just always love talking to her. Here is my latest conversation with Maura Quint. All right, well, I've told you all about her. She's been on the show a lot of times. I'm always happy when I get the opportunity to talk to Maura. Hi, how are you, my friend?
I am doing okay.
Are you feeling really good about COVID coming back? How are you feeling about the return of COVID and the idea that your kids, you have children's, and they're school age, and they are maybe might have to wear a mask again? Definitely going to have to wear a mask again.
That's what the Pediatrician Association, I don't know what they said today. All kids need to be wearing masks. Yeah. I mean, they've been wearing masks the whole time. My kids have. So that's fine. And for me, I mean, right before everything started looking better, like I bought some new masks. So, this is nice. It's like, oh, good. They won't go to waste.
That is exactly the reaction I just had today, because I saw my wife had bought a whole bunch of new masks. And I was like, why did you buy these? She's like, well, the kids are probably still going to need to wear them. I'm like, ugh, what a waste, though. And then this morning I was like, hey, I might need those masks again. Silver linings. Did you get some? Yeah, no, it's nice. So, but I mean, you're acting like I guess it's the norm. Like, did my kids think they weren't I guess my kids are older, so they're vaccinated, but still high school. I mean, I don't know. I felt like people thought that when they returned to school this fall, kids weren't going to have to wear masks, but maybe they didn't. I don't know what people's expectations were. I don't know. I think it really depended sort of district. I'm sure it still will depend district to district, which is so infuriating and frustrating. But I mean, my kids definitely thought they were going to be wearing masks for a long time. So they're scared to take them off. Like, did you lose me? Yeah, I lost you for 1 second there. You said they're scared to take them off, but what? They're scared to take them off, not because of anything that I have said to them, but like, it's just become sort of a security blanket. They're just so used to having masks on that taking them off feels really weird and strange and makes them uncomfortable. That's interesting and sad in a way too, right? I mean, sort of. And at the same time, masks are just not that big an imposition that it doesn't strike me as that personally sad. It's globally sad in ways that, they can't necessarily comprehend yet. But for them individually, it's fine. But I kind of feel like we heard our parents talk for like our whole lives about how they had to hide under their desks. Did you not have to hide under your desk? No, for what reason? For nuclear war. No, what are you, 80? You did? Yeah. What are you talking about? We had drills. We had fire drills. I am not older than you. I know you're not older than me. That's why I don't understand. No one elementary school. Absolutely. It was, really? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was the 80s. I remember I was terrified of nuclear war, but I don't ever remember having a drill like that. I just remember my parents talking about it. We had fire drills. Well, I wonder if it's like the location. So I went to school very, very close to a war college, and we were always told that was like one of the top
targets like this. Like we were always told too, like if the War College caught on fire, or I don't even know if it was the War College or if it was like another building associated with it, but it apparently had documents that if it caught on fire, the fire department was not allowed to come. Like it was that level of classification. So maybe just the proximity to that, we were like ready to be wiped off the earth. I don't know.
Were you as smart when you were a little girl as you are now? Because you're a really smart person. I just can't, and you're a very funny person. I just can't imagine you being like, oh yeah, this desk should save me from an A-bomb. Like, isn't that always been kind of the joke? Like, what are we doing? It's a nuclear bomb. How is hiding out on my desk going to save me?
Yeah, I never thought it through. I was like not thinking about what a bomb was at all.
Oh, I was focused heavily on I was terrified of nuclear war for like 5 years. When I was like 8 years old, that was the thing that kept me up at night.
I was never afraid of nuclear war. Like it just never came to me to be afraid of it. I had so many other fears. I feel like there just wasn't room for that.
What was name an irrational fear that you had?
Oh gosh, I don't know where to start. I had so many fears. All right,
natural disasters.
No, dolls coming to life and killing me.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm so glad I asked. Can we just spend the rest of the time on this?
Yes, no problem.
You thought your dolly was going to.
Here's the deal. Okay. Here's the story. Now you're in for it. You're stuck. It's too late for you, Pete.
Oh, I'll pay for it now. It sounds so awesome.
So I was the oldest grandchild on my mother's side, and I was a girl, and there were lots of great aunts who were very excited that there was a little girl. And they all got me dolls, like as a baby, but like fancy dolls, porcelain dolls you can't play with. The sort of dolls that when like the moonlight hits them, their eyes glow red because they're like these glass. You're not allowed to touch them because like they're worth something. I don't know what they're worth, but they're special. And so instead, they had these like doll stands, which were just these like nooses around their neck, but they stood them upright, just like these little rings around their neck that stood a doll upright. Right. And then in the corner of my room, there was like a bookcase basically that all the dolls lived on that I was not allowed to touch. Plus, I was in no way the sort of girl who liked dolls at all. Like that wasn't my thing. I didn't care about dolls. But these dolls would stare at me every single fucking night, and I couldn't touch them.
It was your fault because you hated them so much.
I did hate them. But then I started to I felt like they were staring at me. I felt like they were like moving, like a car would go by. The lights would like flicker and it would like flash in their eyes.
Funny and scary. Wait, I maybe I wasn't listening well. Was this at your grandmother's house when you visit there?
No,
this was your childhood bedroom? Why were the dolls in your bedroom if you hated them so much?
That's a very good question. Yeah. I'm sure that therapy can unpack that one. But
oh my God, that's crazy.
I think my parents were just so I had a lot of fears as a really small child, and so I think they were just like sick of my irrational fears. So I think there was like a little bit of just like get over it. Like the dolls are gifts. They're in your room. Stop it. I hated these fucking dolls, and every single night at the before going to bed, I would apologize to the dolls if I'd offended them. No. And ask them to let me live for another night.
No.
Yes.
Out loud.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Maura, I think this is the greatest.
You can read my thoughts. Are you crazy? Come on. Like there's a limit.
Well, I know, but I asked that actually because when I would say prayers when I was a little Catholic boy up till like 13, I always said them to myself, and I always thought that was weird. I was like, oh, I'm sure they're here. I'm thinking them.
The omnipresence of God includes inside your head. Sure, yeah, makes sense.
I don't know. The whole thing is a real crazy thing.
Racket.
Yeah, a racket to begin with. So why am I being so irrational by thinking that God also can feel and see my thoughts? Wow, do you have another one like that you're afraid of? And did you grow out of that stuff, or do you still have like weird irrational fears about stuff that you could as an adult?
Well, I still don't want to sleep in a bedroom with dolls. Like, it'll still bother me.
That's actually fine. I'm actually fine with that. I think that's okay to not.
I also developed, and I still don't like seeing mirrors at night. And this is totally like Bloody Marys during sleepovers as a child. I don't know if you did this as a boy. I don't know if that was like a boy thing to do.
I don't think so.
in my world of girl sleepovers, one of the key things that we would do, like, I don't know why, like, it's so funny because we think of little girls, like, we think of pink bows and we think of like, oh, they're playing with ponies and things. But like my experience of being a girl is just like, we're coming for your soul. Let's haunt each other. Let's possess the dead. Like, it was just so like that world is what I think of as little girls, but maybe not little boys. So yeah, one of the main things that we would do would be to play Bloody Mary, like lock yourself in the bathroom and you chant Bloody Mary like 3 times and you look in the mirror and it's supposed to summon up this like demon spirit basically. And you're supposed to see this like Bloody Mary thing. And of course you convince yourself that you see it because you're seeing like flashes of things in a dark room in a mirror. But I fully I internalize the idea that, oh, mirrors at night are portals to the demon world. And I should avoid them. No, Pete, you have to understand. I live alone, and like to get from my downstairs to my bedroom, there is a a closet with a mirror on it at the end of the hallway, and I walk down every single night with the lights turned off with my eyes shut so I don't look in the mirror.
Oh, Maura, I really appreciate your honesty. I do. I think that any adult who lives alone, I do wonder if you grow out of certain things or what what irrational thing. I bet you everybody listening has a handful of these, and you're brave to admit it and make this a safe space for all of them as well to admit theirs. I look forward to them tweeting.
I want to hear too.
Tweet Maura your irrational adult fear that you have, and how
it would make me feel less lonely. I would appreciate that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, that's great and scary. I don't know, because my Julia, my 13-year-old, she doesn't mind me talking about this. I've decided deals with like some anxiety about irrational stuff, and I'm always like, she's gonna grow out of that, right? Like it's not too severe. Right. She talked to somebody about it. But like one night when the dog was trying to get out of her room, I heard her scratching to get out of the room. So I went to open the door, and Julia had just gotten up to let her out, and she sees me standing in the hallway. Julia sees me standing right there, about to open the door, and she screamed out loud. She screamed the word murderer, which is a weird thing if you think about it, to scream at anybody. Like
that is kind of a weird thing.
And I think I responded. I got defensive.
Well, sure, yeah.
I'm not a murderer. I'm your dad.
I think that's a fair response. Imagine if you were just like, "How did you know?" Like that would. You do garden a lot. I don't know what you're burying back there.
What is that connected to? That makes me a murderer?
I'm just saying, you're digging up soil a lot.
What happened to you as a young child in a garden? What horror movie did you see that is making my thoughtful...
Where else are you going to bury a body? Like, I don't know. That just seems like a logical place. You have a reason to be out there with like gardening tools and to like be, uncovering the earth. No one's going to question it. They'll just be like, he's, planting carrots or something. They won't be like, yes, another body. It's a easy cover.
Yeah, it's also good fertilizer if we're being honest.
There you go.
So, getting back to COVID and masks and stuff, like, what do you think about how much attention do you pay to kind of like right-wing media and what you're hearing them saying? I mean, you're so good on Twitter. It makes me feel like you kind of have your finger on the pulse of like the zeitgeist of what's trending and what, when crazy people are saying crazy things. But
always.
Yeah. But I mean, like, why do you think that people aren't getting vaccinated? Are there people in your life or in your family or friends that you know personally that aren't getting vaccinated? What do you think is the impetus? And do you think at this point it changes?
Look, the right has spent a tremendous amount of time building huge media empires to spread disinformation and as well to put things out as little like loyalty tests, as if you do this or you believe this, you're on our side, and you have to keep kind of proving yourself. And they've made vaccinations bizarrely this sort of test. I don't know why they've chosen that particular fight. It's a dumb one to get involved in, but I understand how there are so many people willing to fall for it. I mean, they've been like prepped for this for a long, long time at this point. So sure, of course they think it's insane and crazy, and who would put this in their body? And then you have different streams of it too, right? Like you have some people who are just, Trump said it's good for them not to do it, so they're not going to do it. There's some people who are, the anti-vaccine way before for, all the anti-vaxxers, and those threads are like, there's a lot of different strains of people who want to fight against this. I don't know. It's terrible. It's ridiculous. It's so stupid to think that we can't just get something like this under control when we have a clear way to do it. But here we are.
Do you know anybody that's not getting vaccinated? And if so, do you talk to them about it?
I don't know anyone who has admitted to me that they're not getting vaccinated.
Right.
I mean, I might know some people who aren't getting vaccinated, but no one who has said it out loud to me. I think probably because I got rid of I got rid of so many people like that from my life for years already. So there's not really anyone left that I would still be talking to who would take that kind of mindset. Yeah, which also is probably a contributing factor. I probably should have held on to those friendships and been able to, convince them in some way. The sort of like segregating myself from them.
I think you're to blame. I think you're to blame for at least a few deaths because you've let those negative people in your life go, and you could have convinced them to get vaccinated.
Blame for a few deaths because of the vaccine, or just in general? Because I mean, you could open that up. I'm sure I'm to blame for a lot. I don't want to be too specific there. There's so much you could pin on me, really, when you think about it.
No, I actually think that's a really interesting thing that you're saying because of the last, I don't know how many years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, we have been, all of us been kind of curating the people that we allow in our lives that we're close enough to talk about such things. And in the Trump years, I mean, it's a pretty strict litmus test for a lot of people. Like, I'm sorry, man, good luck, but we're not friends anymore. That happened a lot, and probably more for anti-Trump people leaving the Trump people behind than the other way around. I'm guessing even, but nonetheless, there's a huge overlap with those people that have those political beliefs. Not to say that there aren't liberal, folks who are anti-vax as well, but there's a huge overlap. Yeah. And so it makes sense that they wouldn't be really in your life in a normal thing. I bet you have like relatives or something on Facebook.
That's just it. Like I'm sure there must be some people I'm related to. I'm related to some really stupid people, so it's very possible.
So I mean, how much do you think about?
Oh, I do know an anti-vaxxer. Oh my gosh, I just remembered. I do know one anti-vaxxer.
What can you tell us about they?
So this is a guy that lives down the street from me, and I ran into him. This was a couple months ago, even while I was walking a dog, and I hadn't talked to him in years because he had been traveling. And then he was back, and I stopped because he wanted to talk about the dog, and he came over and knocked on my door later that night to say hi, and he brought me some homemade applesauce, I guess, which was nice. I didn't really think about it at the time, and then he walked in, and then he started sort of talking about what he'd been up to and how many friends he'd lost because he didn't really believe in any of the vaccines. And additionally, this was all, he started launching into that COVID was all a global conspiracy, basically, is where he went to.
Okay.
Which was terrifying to me because I was also, again, alone in my house. I should be more afraid of that than I am of the mirrors, but frankly, the mirrors ultimately scare me. But in this moment, I was a little more afraid of him. And I started texting people desperately to call me, to have my phone ring so I could be oh my God, I'm sorry. You know what?
Smart.
This is
smart.
important.
That's
I gotta go get out of my house because I didn't feel comfortable just being you need to get the fuck out of my house.
Yeah.
Because there was also he was a little physically threatening as a human. So I was just kind of I found an out, but that was the only one that I met and that I talked to.
How long ago was it?
That's a really good question. It must have been right as the vaccines were rolling out. Okay. So whatever that was.
Wow. Yeah. That's upsetting to hear.
It was upsetting. It was very upsetting. It was upsetting to experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. As we're talking, I'm realizing there's people listening going, listen to them talk about, I do know an anti-vaxxer, and me saying, I don't really know any. And there's a lot of people listening that are surrounded by them. And I kind of want to talk to some of them and try to understand. Do you think that that's a worthy goal to ever try to engage with someone to try to change their mind on a thing this important? Because people are always talking about, smart people are saying, You can't change people's minds. And then we're hearing government policy experts saying we're trying to change people's minds specifically about getting this vaccine. And so I do think it's possible. And we have seen people change their minds on the vaccine, especially with this latest variant. But do you think it's a worthy exercise to try or to have a policy to try?
So I think those are two different things. I think having a general policy to try, well, I mean, sure, we can't just like abandon the world. Like we have to try in some way or another. But I think these sort of individual conversations, it's very complicated. I definitely think it's good to have the conversations with these people. I think one of the problems, there's so many different pitfalls to having them, including they're uncomfortable, they're unpleasant. They could, potentially even be frightening. I mean, depending on who you're having a conversation with.
Huge
and
arguments. Yeah, that could get ugly. Yeah.
I mean, so you don't want to put yourself in any sort of risk to do it.
They're always saying, we don't talk about religion or politics. Remember, people used to say that. You could easily throw vaccines because it's pretty divisive. So walking into that conversation could be really bad. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. But I do think that it's worthwhile having these conversations. I think that one of the things we have to always kind of remember is that, like, just because the person didn't immediately change their mind in a conversation with you doesn't mean that your conversation or your influence didn't matter. Because usually with these things, like, it takes, not usually, but it can take wearing down, like erosion of people's beliefs, and that can take time. So, to be one of the rainfalls on the rock still matters.
Yeah, no, good, all good points. And I mean, you just have to think too, like, people seeing all these people dying around them and hearing these statistics about the places where people are vaccinated versus not. You wonder if that drip, 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 I think that's the metaphor you actually just used, makes a difference and gets people to get the Fauci ouchie. Did you hear that? What's this fuck?
I hate that term so much.
It's so bad. It's so cringy.
I hate it.
Because you've heard, the reason you hate it the most is because you're now hearing that Lauren Boebert saying it in your head.
Oh God,
is that
I'm
right?
No, I don't. I completely I don't hear anything that is related to her. I don't ever want to hear her speak ever. So I've made a point not to. But no, I've seen that. I saw that phrase get used a ton. I just hate it because I don't like the infantilization of anything like that. Like, I don't like when grown-ups say, I got to go pee-pee or wee-wee. Like, it's just annoying. It's just something that, like,
no, you're better.
I think
it's because you have a lot of respect for words and language. You're an excellent writer, and that is so beneath you as an adult. You're like, come on, let's move on. Try a little harder. There's got to be something a little bit better than that, right?
That must be it. Yeah.
What's his name? DeSantis, Florida. Mm-hmm. So he's got a spike now in Florida of COVID, and he is also apparently selling, or his campaign is, like, anti-Fauci T-shirts, anti-vax, like, gear.
Yeah.
And then he's telling people to go get the shot at the same time. Like, it's just like the politicians, the leaders who also are vaccinated, or the pundits on Fox or elsewhere that are also vaccinated and asking all these questions. That kind of, I'm almost tired of talking about Republican hypocrisy or political hypocrisy, but, like, the idea that you would eat a thing and then tell other people not to eat it, or you would get a vaccine and then tell other people not to, that seems striking in its hypocrisy. I can't, it makes me hot angry.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely no difference than what they've been doing the whole time. It's fine for me to do it, but I'm going to let you die. And I'm going to tell you that you should, continue on that path because it makes you more faithful to me. Like, but that's been the whole sort of rhetoric of everything the whole time. There's never been a Republican mistress who couldn't get an abortion, no matter what the stance was. Like, they've always done this. Always.
And that's a really good example. The abortion issue is probably the best example. Or just the anti-gay attitude among some policymaker, constantly overtly anti-gay. And in the meantime, he's gay a lot with other men. And it's like, what are you doing?
There's a total disconnect between what a person actually sort of believes for themselves / what they will do to achieve power. And, I mean, I can't pretend that's even just a Republican issue. It's just hypocrisy tends to be more blatant in that regard. But, certainly the power seekers, whoever they are, tend to have very, very different double standards.
Right. Yeah, all good points. I wanted to ask you about, did you see or hear about President Biden's speech, the economic speech?
Today?
Yeah, I guess he gave is this today? Yeah.
I guess I should have, but I have been in meetings, so I'm going to have to catch up on that one.
Because
now you're just telling me about work I'm going to have to do tonight.
He just touted the economy and saying all these statistics and tried to tamp down on people's concerns about inflation and so on. But I want to ask you about what you're hearing and what you're advocating for at Tax March in terms of the American. I mean, I think the most important thing that we can talk about with you or other people who are on top of this issue, activists on this issue, thinking about these issues of taxes, is that this is another thing where overwhelmingly people agree, right, on raising taxes on a certain segment of the population. And yet there's a disconnect when it comes to policymakers, especially Republicans who signed a pledge. And so what is public opinion say about taxes, and what is what is happening in terms of policymaking, the conversation in Washington? Because it seems like Democrats aren't, in my mind, doing a good enough job messaging those statistics, what public opinion is on this or other things too.
Well, unfortunately, I wish I could call this like a fully straightforward bipartisan issue where, hey, Dems want to tax the wealthy and Republicans don't. And it's just not that clear cut. The public, yes, absolutely wants to tax the rich. I mean, there was just polling even like within the last couple of weeks. I want to say a Navigator poll that came out as well that showed even in like these districts that are, not solid blue districts, there was just still a strong support for taxing the rich. It is something that is incredibly popular. Politicians don't want to do it, and it's infuriating. I mean, plenty do. We have more than ever. Biden has put in quite a lot of taxes on the rich in his plans, which is great to see. I'd love to see more. I'd love to see a lot more, but I'm still happy to at least trend in that direction. That's great. But the fact that we still have to get some Dems on board is fucking infuriating, but true. It's true.
One of the other issues that's super interesting to me, and probably to you, maybe boring to people who don't pay close attention, and usually people hate the IRS, they hate paying their taxes and so on. But the concept here is that the IRS has been for years defunded and under prepared and personnel, just not enough people working there. And that's been done by design on purpose to make it harder to collect taxes, period. And so one of the proposals has been to shore up the IRS and give them the money that they need in the operating budget and the people that they need to do to collect more taxes. People owe taxes legally to collect it. I'm not doing a very good job explaining this, but it's a really good idea to get revenue into the government. It's not necessarily even changing tax policy. It's just collecting the taxes that are already owed. You're shaking your head. Yes, so I think I'm right there.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
And yet that's not going to be a thing, is what I think I'm hearing.
So this is infuriating. Everything you said, for the most part, is right. I would change one thing. You said that the IRS has been defunded specifically to make it harder to collect taxes. That's not entirely true. It's been defunded to make it harder to collect rich people's taxes. The IRS has no problem collecting taxes from poor and lower working middle classes because their taxes are much more straightforward. So it's a lot easier. And that's the reason there was, I want to say it was a ProPublica report, but I may be wrong as to who put it out. But there was definitely a report recently within the last year that was looking into the fact that the IRS audits far more poor people than they do rich people. And they, and that you're far more likely to be audited if you are working class than if you are wealthy, which is ridiculous because, of course, if someone is avoiding taxes at these lower levels, what they're avoiding is a small amount. When the rich are avoiding taxes, which they are all the time, nonstop, it is huge numbers. And so you're going to get more bang for your buck if you're. I don't know why the thing keeps going out, but there is a thunderstorm going on, so apologies. But you're going to get much more bang for your buck if you audit the wealthy. But they're not doing that because they don't have the manpower to do it, because those audits are much more difficult and take a lot more time. And so, yes, Biden put forth this proposal to fund the IRS, to give them more power so that they can actually go after the tax dodgers who are the rich. And yeah, Republicans are shutting it down. Even the so-called moderate Republicans or, the not far right crazies, there are still a few of them. They're also, just absolutely shutting it down. And it's one of those sort of very clear examples that they are only in it to help rich people. That's it. That's why they're there. That's the whole point. They just want to help rich people. There's no other purpose to them serving a political term.
So well explained. Yeah, really, really important point. And I wish that was not the case. And I, people need to understand that it's not them. Exactly. We're getting penalized. The vast majority of people who file in mostly simple, obvious ways, because most people make money similar ways and don't have a billion different revenue sources that have all kinds of loopholes to get around. That's the issue. Well explained. All right, let me ask you one final question about social media and unmask you. I want to unmask.
Oh, no.
My secret.
Just when I eat masks again, you're going to take it all.
Well, because when my pedophile scandal happened, I don't know what to call it. When I got called pedophile 40 times a second for like 5 days, you're one of several people I reached out to talk about it with, because you have a really big presence on Twitter, and because you're a woman.
I am.
That means you get a certain kind of a smart and funny woman to boot, with a big following. A lot of people see what you write, and a lot of people don't like it and say horrible things to you. And so you also know how Twitter works well. So I was like, you've dealt with people harassing you and saying horrible things. And what do I do here? And you basically told me you had to block them all. You said, don't delete them. You told me everything what to do, and were really helpful on it. And then you went even further, knowing that I was going away with my family. You said, let me do it. Let me take your Twitter password. And there's very few people that you give that to, obviously, in your life. But I obviously trust you. And you went about blocking hundreds of, probably thousands and thousands of people. And it was really, really an amazing, thoughtful thing that you did for me and my family, frankly. And my question to you is just about that, like, how often, like, what kinds of things happen to you? How often do you deal with this shit? What do you think about that negative, scary, awful part of social media? And I hope that someone like you, never leaves Twitter because you're so good at it. But I mean, what do you think about that whole thing and the people who are the kind of people who say that shit to you?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I did not do that for you, the blocking. I just wanted an excuse to be able to like sit on my couch for 8 hours of the day, staring at my phone, but feeling like I was productive. So it was great. I could be like, no, I'm helping a friend. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I can't do anything else today.
Hey, whatever you got to say. It was a huge help to me. It was I could not relax at all at a time when I really needed to be, and I was able to as much as I was because of you, literally knowing that you were zapping these awful people nonstop. So
that's what I kept telling you. You had to zap them like bugs. I mean, that's just it. So when I was first on Twitter, I was terrified of those types of mobs. I was really, really frightened by it. And I also had this like ego or this sort of feeling like, oh, I can't block people because then they'll feel like they got to me. They'll feel like they won or something. Sure. Yeah. And I had that attitude for a while until I did sort of just have a shift in my thinking and go, wait a second, they're making it unpleasant for me here. I'm not getting paid to be here. Like I'm getting very little out of this other than my own enjoyment. And the negative interactions are starting to get to me, and it's making me not want to be here, a place where I've met people. I've had like cool opportunities. I've made friends. I get to go on podcasts. It's great. Yeah. And I realized that, in fact, by not blocking them, they were winning because they were starting to affect my emotional well-being and a place that I enjoyed. And that's kind of when it shifted of like, oh, why am I putting up with this? I don't need to put up with any of this shit. Like I block everyone constantly now. You just have to like mildly sort of bother me in some way or say something that I find just really like kind of gross and reprehensible, but it doesn't even have to be towards me. If I see you saying something terrible to somebody else, I'm just like, block that person. I don't ever need to see them. I see the sort of person they are. Like I block nonstop. And after that, Twitter started getting better and better because I don't like, I get far less hatred now that I block so regularly and so freely than I ever used to, which is fantastic. I mean, I still get it, but it's easier now.
Why do you not mute?
I don't mute because I don't want to allow for pile-ons. I mute plenty of people. Like if you're somebody who follows me and you're just annoying, then I'll mute you. Like, if you're
the dog pile, which is what was happening to me there. Like if I didn't block them, it would have. I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because they start to spread it, and also I never know who is a sock puppet account for a bigger account as well. So there is always this feeling of like, yeah, I've blocked the like, I don't know, Jack Posobiec's or, the Matt Walsh blogs or whatever, those types of people. But I know they have a ton of other freaking accounts like that they use to build themselves up. So anybody who agrees with them.
How often or what percentage of the stuff, the negative things that have been said to you is gender based?
Oh, most of it.
Really? So isn't it interesting that none of it, outside of the pedophile thing, and even that wasn't? Like, all my stuff is always like, nobody knows who you are. You're a shitty comedian, kind of. Like,
I love nobody knows who you are. That's like my favorite. I get that one all the time too. Yeah. Like, why would they? Yeah, that's fair. I don't know who I am. That's great. That's good.
My response is, yeah, they do. People know me. What are you talking about? Like, tons of people famous. Know me. Yeah. Super famous. I'm on Cameo. People on Cameo know me. I've never done one, but no one's ever hired me, but I'm on it.
I'm going to get a t-shirt with your face on it and just be like, Pete, he's famous. That's it.
Yeah, that'll work. They'll be like, is that pedophile guy? I love talking to you. I'll let you go. I really appreciate your time as always. And everybody go follow Maura and support everything she's doing. Taxmarch.org. Anything else? Any other plugs? Any other appearances?
I'm at Behind Your Back if you want to sling some hate at me on Twitter.
Yeah, and there's a link to that in the show notes as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, there she goes. Go sling some love to Maura on Twitter at Behind Your Back. That's Maura Quint, taxmarch.org. All right. Thank you to Glenn Kirschner and Maura Quint. Thank you to veryheal.com/Pete for sponsoring today's show. Go visit them, get your medical marijuana card. And thank you to everybody who supports this show with a paid subscription. If you haven't already, please sign up for as little as $5. Be a part of our growing, amazing community of curious, passionate, hilarious, thoughtful, generous, brilliant listeners and contributors. And we'd love to have you join us. And see you Thursday night at the Hangouts, anytime on the Discord platform, and Monday, July 26th in Boston with J. Alco Van. Can't wait for that. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to hearing from you. Talk to the great Dennis Garling, who's a longtime listener. We've never talked, but we talked today for a while. Dennis, I hope you're listening. Great conversation with you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. If we haven't talked and you'd like to reach out to me, and I'll try to arrange that. standupwithpete@gmail.com is my email address. All right. I love you. You're not alone. Thank you for listening. Gotta go. Let's let one of our favorite members of the community. We try not to play favorites. Come on. But he's a Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter who wrote this song for us. It's You Gotta Stand Up. John Carroll, take us out, brother.
Stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost seed of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand